Hey humans, how's it going? Susan Ruth here. Thanks for listening to another episode of Hey Human Podcast. On this episode, I spoke with Niurka D'Amour, and Nikky is a United States citizen by way of Havana, Cuba. And she tells her extraordinary story of her time in Guantanamo, her journey to Guantanamo. It's a crazy story. She talks about all sort of the politic of the time when she was growing up. I don't know if you know the history of mass exodus from Cuba to America. I've put a bunch of links on heyhumanpodcast.com so that you can have a reference point if you want to check those out before you listen or after to this episode. Little background. Batista was corrupt. He seized power in a coup and was considered by the Cuban people to not be legitimate. They weren't real thrilled about his policies. They weren't. They saw him as a puppet of the United States. And Castro came in. He overthrew Batista. He promised to give Cuba her independence, and he was this man of the people and all that stuff. And then, of course, then he became a communist. So, hence the mass exodus. It's a fascinating story. I do encourage you to learn about it if you don't already know about it. There's only so much our 9th grade history classes teach us, I suppose. So anyway, Nikky tells the story of her experience, and it's fascinating. I'm really honored that she shared her story on Hey Human. It's wild when I hear stories like this. I think, gosh, could I have endured some of the things that people have had to endure, refugees have had to endure? Do I have the wherewithal, the skill, the fortitude? Such a crazy experience. Anyway, so that being said, Nikky and I sat down, had a great conversation. I hope you enjoy it. I think you will. A lot of stuff going on. I have a really exciting thing coming up this weekend, which y'all will know about after the fact. So I got to do it first. But I'm really excited to share it with you. How's that for a secret cliffhanger? It's not really a cliffhanger, I guess, because you have no story to hang from. But suffice it to say, it's very cool, and I'm really excited. Anyway, the usual stuff, of course, heyhumanpodcast.com for all your Hey Human podcast needs. And there's a donate button on that page. This is a one-woman show, and any support is greatly appreciated. And that even comes down to just even going to iTunes and rating and reviewing Hey Human. I heard through the grapevine that it was trending on iTunes, so I tell you what, that made my day. It's really exciting. Thank you, everybody, for listening and for spreading the word, and for telling me people that you think I should talk with. Y'all have made some really wonderful suggestions, and there's some fantastic episodes coming. On social media, as usual, you know where to find Hey Human Podcast. They're all out there. Twitter, of course, it's Susan Ruthism. And heck, I'm going to plug my music for a second, just because why not? I might as well, right? It's Susan Ruth is on iTunes, and I have a bunch of records up there. So if you want to check out my music, please do. Again, it's on iTunes under Susan Ruth. I don't think people have CD players anymore. If you do, you can order a CD through susanruth.com. But, it's a modern world. Anyway, thanks for listening. Thanks for spreading the world. Thanks for spreading the world. Thanks for spreading the word. And you can email me, Susan at heyhumanpodcast.com, and I will happily respond. And thanks for being you. We're all in this together, are we not? thanks for being a part of this journey with me. And here we go. Let's just keep on rocking.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Thank you for being on Hey Human.
No, thank you for thinking about me.
Yes, well, your story is such a fantastic story. I thought, my gosh, it would be great to have you be on. We met in Bellingham, Washington, when I was there for a time, and I remember when you first told me the story of how you came to America, that I was just enthralled by the story. It definitely has a lot of twists and turns. So I appreciate the fact that you're willing to talk about it.
Yep. I was born in Havana, 1969, right in the middle of, I guess the revolution was really, everybody was really involved into the process of going from capitalism to socialism, even though it happened in 59. Of course, it took years to kick in. It was a lot of scars of everything. I mean, there was no lot of food. Everything was rationalized. The food. There was not really anything that you could actually go and buy. But slowly, we started making friends with back then the Soviet Union, and all of a sudden, we pretty much became a leash of the Soviet Union. Everything that went into the country was Russian. They were giving us a lot of supplies, and pretty much the only thing we were giving back that we had was sugar cane, and not a lot of tourism back then. And the other thing was just education. So
wait, you were able to give education to Russians, or the Russians?
Yeah, a lot of them came, and it was like a educational interchange. There was a lot, even within the military, a lot of schooling was done in Russia. Mainly, I want to say Ukraine, but there were other countries too that I remember. Moscow, cities, Moscow, and other countries, Romania, Czechoslovakia. A lot of our careers in a university were studied in the Soviet Union back then, that had all these countries. One of them actually was my brother. He stayed in Ukraine for like 5 years.
Your father?
My brother, actually.
Oh, your brother. Okay.
Mm-hmm. But I pretty much, was raised in. It was really simple. We didn't have a lot of, other ideas from outside our world and the Soviet Union. So we really didn't have a way of comparing what we had, and what anybody else had. I mean,
was it more third world like back then?
It was, and at the same time, of course, Cuba had this big issue. Politics with the U.S. and actually did not allow any of family members to speak or to have any kind of interchange with the families that they were in U.S. So at the beginning, it was really strict. Families were, pulled apart. You couldn't communicate with them. A lot of them pretty much broke relationships. And I want to say it was 100%. The Cuban government wanting to have any kind of relationship with U.S. U.S., as we grew up, was always, the enemy. I can think of at least 3 big exodus that happened in Cuba. The one obviously was 59, when he came into power, and all the people that actually had money in Cuba had to flee. I mean, they had to leave.
When you say he, you're speaking of Castro, yes?
yeah, when he got into power, Castro, to get rid of Batista, which it was believed to be just a puppet of U.S. He took over all the rich people properties. I mean, he completely took over everything, and so these people fled. I mean, a lot of them, and then at the beginning, actually, they sent all the kids ahead of time, even kids that they even people that didn't even have family. That's when the Peter Pan movement into the U.S. came. There were a lot of kids that came alone, and then the parents came back into. Left Cuba and came into U.S. Then 1980, the revolution was very strong. There was no opposition. If it was opposition, um, uh, it will end up very, very quickly. A lot of
Meaning
people went
people
to
would get
prison.
killed, right? I mean, if you opposed.
To tell you the truth, that information was never public. We never knew of anything that happens to these people. We never knew. We knew that they will go into prison, but I personally never had an idea of what was happening to them. I do remember in 1980 when a lot of people started complaining because you had to live the way that they structure you to live. The government took care of everybody. I mean, you will get just, you have a car to go to a store. Grocery shopping was just whatever. It's exactly what's going through, Venezuela is going through right now. I mean, you have to go to a store, you get a car, you can only get this much food. There's not really anything that you can buy in a black market because there's not a black market, because you will get, put into prison for things that are completely ridiculous. One of them was back then the US dollars actually were illegal to have. If you were found with $10, you will probably go to jail for 10, 20 years.
Oh my God.
And then in 1990, I want to say 93, 92, 93, all of a sudden Fidel said, dollars are okay, right? Now we can handle dollars. Yet we are not paying dollars. As a matter of fact, I was already a nurse in Cuba, and my salary right out of nursing school, which was a 5-year BSM program, was 213 pesos a month.
That's nothing.
A peso. Well, when this happened, that he said it's okay to have dollars in a black market, and then the peso, for 150 pesos, you could buy a dollar. So we're talking about $2-3 a month. But yet, even if you had dollars, you couldn't just go into a store. The stores that will take dollars that were destined for tourism. So you would actually have to try to meet somebody that was a foreigner, ask them to go in a store, give them some money so they could buy something for you. And even that was illegal. If they caught you, you were going to be in big trouble. Most likely would lose the money or end up in prison.
Did you
Same
feel
thing.
like I'm sorry. I just don't want to lose this line here. So in order to control a people, certainly controlling their food source is a great way to control a people. And you said that Fidel came in and took the wealthier people's homes away from them. And I mean, prior to this happening, prior to the movement of socialism from capitalism, did your parents? Do you remember your parents saying like, "Oh God, now things are going to get really bad, really ugly"? Or were people hopeful? Or I mean, how did?
So like anything else, you have capitalism. So the people that are poor are going to be happy because he's going to hand over property that did not belong to him, and now he will give it to these people, right? Mm-hmm. He will divide the land of the people, of the workers, the farmers that could go and cultivate, right? But that land didn't belong to him in the first place. So the poor people actually embraced this change. I mean, all of a sudden we were all going to be equal. The whole ideal Marxism was going to happen. We all going to be the same. We are going to have access to the same. We are equal, right? At the end of the day, we all going to have the same, even if the same means a piece of bread in a day and 5 eggs for a week. But we're going to be the same. Of course, at the beginning, I think it was the government was, so new, was pretty fair, but slowly, like anything else, the government started getting corrupted, right? So obviously they had access to things that we never did. My family, the generation of my parents that were young when the capitalism was there, they embraced the socialism. They thought that was the greatest idea. Yet the parents didn't think so. Even my grandparents that were poor, there was something wrong about it. Like, everything changed. All of a sudden, talking about even holidays. My grandparents were used to Thanksgiving. They were used to Christmas. Then that went away. I never even knew any of it. Why? Because there was also the restriction to a religion, right? So he actually closed all the churches. He believed that pretty much if you didn't see God, and this was taught in school, it didn't exist. So at school, we actually study Marxism, Leninism, and we study all these theories of communism and how the societies were different. And there is so much madness throughout his 60-something years of power that I kind of feel that I'm sure and driving you in different directions at the same time.
Yeah, it's good.
But I remember growing up, I didn't know any better. I never knew any holiday that wasn't a revolutionary Thai holiday. I mean, the triumph of the revolution, the International Workers' Day, International Women's Day, that pretty much nobody here knows this because it's a socialism way, right? And the schools, there was no religion, there was no going to church, nobody baptized their kids. Our grandparents, they were all kind of religious. You had to get rid of all images, like I remember my grandfather, my father telling my grandmother that he belonged to a communist party and she couldn't have the Last Supper picture that she had in the living room. My grandmother had to take it down because my father was furious, right? So then in the 90s, people started getting, 80s started getting upset again. And Fidel decided that the Cubans that lived in Miami could start traveling again to Cuba, right? So now these people are bringing in money, food, clothes, but not everybody has family in Miami. So I was really young, and that's when you started questioning, why don't we have these things? Why do they have nicer things? So everybody started wanting to leave the country. And the families that were in U.S. that had family in Cuba and had boats, they started coming and taking their family members with them. And Fidel all of a sudden agreed to this, but also what he did is that he opened up all the prisons in Cuba, and that's when you got that big exodus in 1980 from El Mariel, what you call here Marielitos, that most of them end up in Miami, and a lot of them were people that were from prison or people from mental institutions, and kind of he got rid of the people that he didn't want there. To have an idea of anything that happened in the prisons there, you would actually have to know, have a family member that actually went through it, because none of this was public. I mean, we had two TV stations there was nothing played that was not approved by them, right? And in the schools, for example, if you were to have a class where you will watch a U.S. movie, the purpose behind it was to, at the end of the day, pretty much criticize the movie based on what kind of subliminal message the U.S. was putting subversive thoughts into our minds. So the brainwashing happens really, really early in life. Like when you go to school, you go to a big plaza, everybody is in formation, like a military school. You have uniforms. You actually have to salute the flag. You have to sing the hymn and other socialist hymns that they came out with. So and every year will be this is, I don't know, 1980, the whatever 20 something years of a triumph of the revolution, and you have to write all this. So the thing happens very slowly, but it's very deep and ingrained.
Yeah, well, I mean, we in America do the Pledge of Allegiance every morning in our schools, which also, by the way, says under God. So in a way, that indoctrination is unilateral across, I think, the world. It's just something that people do with children, perhaps to shape them.
It starts early, but this is the deal: is that it is great to love your country and to want to protect your country, versus not allowing people to have different opinions. And I mean, if you had any other opinion, Susan, you were taken down. There was not going against it, and to the point that we didn't have a lot of most of our transportation was public transportation, and then as a matter of fact. In the late 80s, 90s, I mean, I remember having to go to work for miles and miles on a bike, and whatever, it's not for health reason, believe me, it's that it was nothing. You had to do it that way because you couldn't get in a bus, nobody had a car, there's no way of getting any parts, there's not a Home Depot, there's not an auto parts store that you can get anything. If you had anything, you stole it from the government. If you were painting your house, that we had in every single street, we had a neighbor's watch. Well, that neighbor's watch will be watching you, because if there's not a Home Depot for you to buy paint, you're stealing from the government, and they're going to tell you. If your house smells like you have a steak and it smells good, everybody's going to know. Because there's no selling cows. There is no beef being sold at the store because there is none. So you are stealing. If you were a farmer and you had a cow, that cow had to be registered. If that cow died, you had to bring somebody to actually see that cow dead and have a death certificate for that cow. So even if it was theirs, it wasn't really theirs.
Right, it belonged to the government, yeah.
At the end of the day, it did. The same thing with the land that they, were working on. Part of it wasn't fully theirs. They had to do whatever they asked them to do. So in the 80s, I remember as a child, I had to be 80s. I was probably 10, 11 years old. I remember that they will take you either from that group, that Neighbors Watch, or your school to houses where the people in there were known to not being with the government and were about to leave the country when Maria came. And it would be like 50 people in front of those people's house yelling at them. You're a bunch of traitors, throwing rocks at the house. And I actually remember one of my mom's co-worker, somebody threw an egg at him and pretty much took his eye out. So I witnessed that. I saw that. And And it's just sad to say, but I thought that that was normal, and we were supposed to do that. These were people that were not with the government. If you're not with us, you're against us, and there's no other way. So we were brought. This is another one. Every January 1st, which is what we took as his entrance, Castro entrance into Havana and took over the government, he will have, this was insane, we have this big, huge plaza, and there will be no school that day. You will have to go in buses, and they will take you there, and you will stand up there in a open. It was so hot. Nothing to eat, not even water to drink. And you have to hear his whole freaking speech every single year. And you know what is sad? I went to Cuba on April, this past April, and they still do that. I was just completely beside myself. So, rich people were not happy with the government. Poor people were happy with the government until there was nothing to eat, because all of a sudden the Soviet Union fell when Gorbachev. So now we have nobody to support us. And when I mean supporting us, I mean that all the electrodomestics, whatever little we have, they were all Russian. Soap, pads, clothes, everything came from Russia. Every single thing. I cannot even tell you anything. Oh, for a while, China was one of the people we were trading with, because China is a communist country. I mean, they can say whatever modified they are, they're a communist country. That's just a given. So in the 90s, my generation is getting out of the university and is realizing that, what are we going to do? We don't have anything.
You can even get basic medicines, feminine products. I mean, toilet paper was hard to come by.
Oh, toilet paper? I can count with this hand how many times growing up, I left Cuba when I was 24. I can count with this many hands how many times I used toilet paper.
Wow.
Okay? I mean, I'm talking about that you will go out to get newspapers just so you could wipe your butt. It's not even to read. There were many jokes made about it, like our butts were smarter than anybody, because we were reading constantly newspaper. At the end of a school year, you didn't dump your notebooks, because you had to rip the pages and use them. It was insane. We had no toothpaste. It's funny to see all this. How this country is now going towards the natural. We were natural because we had no choice. We had to brush our teeth sometimes with baking soda, if you could find baking soda. We had to, like lipstick and things like that, with things that we made. We made soap. I mean, talking about chemistry class, we were making soap, we were making shampoo, because there was nothing, absolutely nothing. So in the 90s, when my generation gets out of university, we're like, so what do we do now? I mean, we don't have enough money to do anything, or get a house, or buy clothes, or nothing, absolutely nothing. And I was already, this was 1994 when I decided that I was leaving. Leaving was a difficult and weird situation, because it just came out of nowhere. I was at a friend's house, and her neighbors were planning on leaving. So at that point, especially Havana, because Havana is the one that has the most how can I say? They're the ones that have or see or have more influence of other countries, because pretty much everybody that went to Havana to study or to to do anything, they went to Havana. So we knew that life outside Cuba was different. But even the people outside Havana that lives in the countryside, they never see people. They were not used to seeing people from other countries, right? So they knew there was something better out there for them that they could do. And pressure started building up. It was like a pressure cooker living in Havana, because a lot of people started doing things that you knew that were going to cause issues, like throwing rocks to glass windows. And we used to have nothing. We still have this small ferries that will go from one part of the port to another part of the port instead of having to drive. And a few people stole those little boats and took off to U.S. So I want to say after the second or third one, the Cuban government sank one of these boats full of people, including little kids that died. And you can look it up. And I don't even remember what kind of excuse was given. And that at that moment, I was already outside nursing school. I was working as a teacher, teaching nursing in the same faculty where I graduated from. I was at a friend's house, and I knew the neighbors because I had happened to be at the delivery of the daughter, right? And they are like, "Oh, well, we have a boat, and we're thinking of leaving the country." Everybody, you could feel that there was another exodus. People knew that it was going to happen again. I don't know what it is. It's that feeling of people being really sick of the government, and they just rather die in the ocean than have to deal with that anymore, right? So I said, well, I would like to leave. I don't want to be here. I mean, I don't make any money. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't want to have any kids here. I don't even have anything to feed myself.
Well, unlike Venezuela, people in Cuba, I mean, there were people starving to death. I don't think people really realize, because it gets painted in movies and such that it was this romantic, full of music and art, and
there's a lot of truth to that. Because
I'm sure that there's
did we make fun of this situation?
Yeah,
and some of the jokes were cruel. So, I mean, I'm talking about. I remember one of the jokes was that, okay, Fidel is having a meeting with all the people in Cuba and say, okay, well, we all have to die for our countries tonight, and we're going to do that by hanging ourselves.
Oh, wow.
Do you have any questions? And the guy raises the hand and say, do you provide the rope, or we have to bring our own? We knew. But I think one of the criticisms that my parents' generation and my generation gets is that we didn't stay to fight. Well, this is the deal, that when your government regulates your army, it's a tough spot to be. You have no access to anything, and I mean nothing. And everybody's prepared. Even when you go to university, you have to pass certain schooling where you're taught how to shoot, how to throw grenades, how to defend your country, right? And I have to say, I was very lucky because my family was never that poor. We always had something to eat, but I did meet people that didn't have anything on a daily basis. All they had probably was rice or beans, really nothing else. I remember we became, in the late 80s with the revolution, all the rations came back, right? Not only that, but we had power outages 12 hours a day. So, like every other day.
That's the government shutting off the power.
Yes. And so what happened is that if you dare to open that fridge, your mother will kill you, because whatever was in that fridge was going to go bad. Especially back then, they started giving us some kind of they say that was a ground beef with soy. It was like soy with 2 pieces of I don't know what. But that thing, every time that the power went out, will turn green. And we ate that shit. They are things that I ate that I wouldn't be able to tell you what they are. really, seriously. So I said, I want to go. I want to go. What do I have to do to leave? And they're like, well, we have this boat and we're trying to fix it. At this point, I never even seen the boat. I don't even know if this is true. But if you give us some money, we need dollars and we'll be able to fix it and we'll be able to go. So I got to my grandparents' house, and my grandmother had visited Miami to see her daughter, my aunt, and she came back. She's like, "You have to leave. You have no future in this country. You have to go." Right? And I said, well, there's these people trying to leave, but I don't have anything. She's like, well, I have a little bit of money, and I brought a few stuff from Miami and sell it. So she gave me whatever she had. I mean, shoes, rice cooker, and I just went in a corner and sold this stuff for dollars. And I think I remember getting like $100 back then. That was a lot of money, believe me. And then the people that asked me, to join them, they did have ties to the church, believe it or not, even though that was very illegal. And I ended up asking a nun for a loan. I want to say it was $100. And without even knowing me, she kind of like gave it to me, like saying, well, I can't say no. I don't think this is a good idea. I could see it in her eyes that she never thought she was going to see that money back. But I actually sold my bike and all the things that I had. I was able to give her money back. So I was happy about that. So one night, all of a sudden, they're like, well, the boat is ready. And it's September 1st, 1994. And we're like, okay, so it's happening tonight. And who's going? I didn't even know. It was a 20-foot boat for 20 people. And when I say a boat, don't think about any boat here from a marina anywhere around here. I'm talking about just an old floating device with a motor. So we got, they're like, well, we have to be in specific location by the beach. And we all get concentrated in this house. And this house, it just seems weird that it's 20 people and this is so organized. So at the end of the day, it was organized by their own government. I mean, those were houses that were used to for intelligence and people undercover and things like that. And at around 3 in the morning, we were like 40 something people. We walked in the middle of a street at nighttime. There was nobody. Took us to the back of the house, and there were two boats. And they pretty much said, there they are. And like you didn't even know what boat you belonged to, or they just. So I just got in a boat. I had not told my family I was leaving.
Oh, wow.
Nobody knew I was leaving. My grandmother knew that I was leaving, but she didn't know any details or anything, right? So she really didn't know when was going to happen. I mean, she gave me the money, but months were by before this boat was ready. So anyway, we get into this boat. I only know a little bit my friends' neighbors that were the parents of her daughter was the one that I helped with the delivery, right? 20 people. The two boats took off at the same time. I don't remember seeing the second boat after that. All I know that we had a young kid in a boat. I want to say he was probably 10 or 11 years old. And it was by like 7 in the morning. I was really disappointed because I looked up and the sun was rising over Havana. And I could still see the whole Havana. Like, I mean, we haven't really moved much. And all of a sudden, the water pump of the boat broke. Now it's September, so the ocean is not really calm. And all of a sudden, we start having waves were like 10, 15, 20 feet. It was just up and down, up and down. And so everybody starts throwing up. The the captain of the boat started trying to fix the water pump to see if we could get out of there. Because at that point, I'm like, I remember saying to myself, I just rather die here than being caught here and brought back, or having to go back knowing that there are people that knew that I was leaving, because there will be no life after this. Literally, all my doors will be closed. I will have no job. I will be seen as
dissident. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. So I'm like, I don't know what's gonna happen, but I'm not going back. That was just in my head. And one guy realized that by heating part of the pump, the boat will continue going. So we were out in a water for like, I want to say 10 hours. And everybody was just, like I say, throwing up everywhere. I had some supplies, so I was giving people some shots for the nausea and this and that. But, you know, that wasn't really going to help with the conditions of the weather. Then all of a sudden, we got far enough that we could hear the helicopters, Brothers to the Rescue from Miami, that I don't know if you knew, but Brothers to the Rescue was a group of Cubans that got together and will fly and either pick up people or advise the the Coast Guard, given the location of where we were. And I didn't know. I knew people were leaving, but I didn't realize that there were about 32,000 of us that took off, and we're all in the ocean in different times. So by September 1st, that's when we left. That's when Clinton declared that nobody that did not make it to U.S. will come in. They will have to be held somewhere else.
President Clinton said that whoever arrives has to be detained.
If you made it to land, you were okay. But then after the first, you were going to be taken back to Guantanamo Bay. Guantanamo Bay is the U.S. base that it has always been an issue between Cuba and United States, where Cuba says that belongs to them, and U.S. says that they have a contract with. From years and years prior. So we see that they're stealing. They see it as we had a contract. We don't owe you anything. This belonged to us.
I'm confused. So basically, if you were in the boat and you made it to the landline, you were okay.
Before September 1st.
Before September 1st, and after that, if you were taken to Guantanamo regardless.
Yeah. So what they had is Brothers to the Rescue will make contact with you, drop down. I remember they dropped down water and like lemons and T-shirts, because a lot of them were just in some kind of a boat or raft or whatever they were on, right? And get walkie-talkies and say, we're going to help you. We're going to advise the Coast Guard that you guys are around here. Just stay here. There's a couple of guys in a rafter behind you. If you can get to them and bring them with you, but if you cannot, just, whatever. So I remember being taken by a Coast Guard. So there were Coast Guard, I'm sure, all over in the Strait of Florida, between Cuba and Florida. And they were picking up everybody. I want to say in the Coast Guard that we got in, we were probably 100 people, 150. So when you first get there, everything is taken from you, because they don't know what you're bringing in, guns or whatever. You're not allowed to bring the little food that all this time you were saving for the trip. Now it gets dumped, and the boats get sunk, right? And you get in, and they pretty much take care of you, feed you, give you water. And I remember in the middle of the night, they just took us in one of those Zodiac little boats to a bigger boat. We were about 3,000 people in that boat, and that boat like sits in the middle of the ocean. So I was there for like 3 days, and you get in, and you were giving a pillow, a blanket, pretty much 3 or 4 meals a day, which we had never seen that in all. And
were you scared? I mean, you're a young woman.
You are kind of scared, but you can see how controlled they have the situation. But now you're with 3,000 people that you probably know one or two. You have to sleep on the floor. You really are not told where you're going. I mean, we had an idea that we're going to get sent to Guantanamo Bay. We pretty much had that idea, but nobody that you could certainly talk to that will give you information. When you're dealing with the military, there's so many levels, that they just say, we're going to be here until they told us to, that we have to move. So, but I think they made everything possible to, feed us and take care of us. Of course, I don't think they were prepared for 32,000 people. And even in that boat alone, there was 3,000 people. We're all sleeping right next to each other. We don't know who they are. The bathrooms are made up toilets, and if you look up, there's a guard looking down to make sure that in that toilet nothing is going to happen. And I see their point of view, but I couldn't even go to a bathroom when there's a guy standing up looking down to see if I'm doing something that would harm the rest of them, right? And so after 3 days, you could feel the boat moving, and we're sent into Guantanamo Bay. We got there really late at night, and you're formed in line, and as you pass by, now they give you a bunch of supplies. I mean, you get a bucket with a blanket and sheets and soap and shampoo, conditioner, and pretty much the tent that I ended up going to was a tent for 30 people. Oh, you get given a cot too. So you open your cot, 30 people have to fit there in that tent. So you're sleeping right next to somebody that you don't know.
Did they segregate it by sex? So the females.
So what happened is that eventually they had to avoid, and I'm sure U.S. had a lot of experience with refugees. So what they did is whoever was not in a family group, there was a camp for only men's. So the men were put in one camp, and the rest of them, not everybody, as a refugee, ingenuity kicks in, and they have no way of proving anything. I could say, you are my sister, he is my brother. There's no way of proving anything. We don't have any documents. U.S. and Cuba don't share any kind of information that we ever know who we are. And that's exactly what happened. And I don't know if you ever watched the movie Green Card. And it was exactly like that. Once we got there, and we sat there for so long because of politics between Miami and DC. Definitely, Miami did not want all these people coming in at the same time. So they decided that even though they didn't tell us, it was pretty painful to live in a camp. I mean, you were sitting all day long doing nothing. We have no news from anybody. We are eating MREs 3 times a day.
MREs, the government food.
Yeah, the military, meals ready to eat that the military gets. And the camps, what they did now, they put us all over the golf course that they have in Guantanamo Bay. And there were many, many camps, enough to have 32,000 people there. And the camps had the number of tents could vary, based on how big the area was. And they're all, chicken wire, so you couldn't get out of there. And so you will get up, and there was nothing to do. At the beginning, we didn't even have showers. You had to take showers. They will bring a pipe of water, a tank of water. You'll get a bucket, and had to go into those plastic porta potties and that are filled with shit to the top. You have to close them and just throw water. You have no clothes, so you either, if you're lucky enough to have a second pair of shorts or whatever, but if otherwise you'll have to make friends with somebody that did, and you wash one and the other one will use the other one, and so it became, we were back into being in Cuba, right? But at least we have water. There was still hope that we would come into U.S. We just didn't know how long that would take. And we pretty much had meals. We didn't have to worry about it. But like anything else, refugees started trying to find a way. How do you entertain all these people, right? So sometimes there were some camps that they would put movies. Then a lot of people from Miami started coming in, doing concerts. Then all this world relief organizations started bringing in clothes, and then you were able to wear something else, and they started making showers. And to tell you the truth, 1994 Exodus was a little bit different because most of the people that were leaving were professionals, people that have been physicians, architects, nurses, surgeons that had to pretty much leave their careers to become butchers or drive a cab, because you would make more money doing that than living out of what a physician gets in Cuba. Right? So it's a lot of professionals there. So there wasn't much crime going on. And on top of that...
there was not much crime.
No, at all. And then on top of that, you had the men separated. I don't remember ever having or heard anything really bad happening. They also had clinics where people had chronic disease, or if you were sick for the day, you would go just to the front of the camp. And, of course, most of us was very limited English at that point, and a lot of people did not, but somehow the communications happened. The U.S. government actually, at the beginning when we got there, the Navy was the one that was in charge of us, and then it was the Air Force, and then it was the Army, and they would rotate. And there were psychiatric clinics with real psychiatrists taking care of the people that were sick there. I started volunteer in a clinic as a nurse, so I got to every day go to work, right? The payment was just to have ice. We're living in the middle of Cuba in a tent. It's really, really hot. So even having access to ice was a privilege, right? But also started talking to the soldiers, and, they wanted to learn Spanish. We wanted to learn English. The relationship, like anything else between humans, starts. And some of them just became friends for years and years. There's still people that I talk to, or Facebook or whatever, from them. We learn a lot. Some of them had surgery there. They had all the conditions to take care of us, and I think they did a great job. It was hard for us because every year when we woke up, if somebody had a radio somehow, I don't know how they got a radio, but some people did, there would be news from Miami. Oh, they're all coming in, and everybody will wake up. Oh my God, we're going. And then the following day, no, they say we're not going, and they're going to send us all back. And being used to Cuba, where good or bad, the news are real. We weren't used to seeing 2 or 3 different stations that will say the same or different things at the same time.
Yeah.
So who do you believe to? We weren't used to that. I mean, we were used
That's
to
the
that.
American way.
Yeah, we were used to that. If Fidel said, we're going to kill everybody today, that was what's going to happen.
Yeah.
You better believe it. That's the official body of a government saying that this is what we're doing today. So it is true.
Huh.
So for us, that was hard, especially for guys, especially guys that were in the camps by themselves without families. It was really hard for them. A lot of them actually escaped and went back to Cuba. So in Guantanamo Bay, there's an area that is completely mined. And it's only one, I want to say, a walkway that you can get into Cuba, but you'll have, it's like a frontier. Like you will have guards in each side, and in the middle is all mine. There's some people that walk through the mine camp and just freaking die. And some of them made it back to the camp when they realized this is more dangerous than trying to go back to Cuba. There's still people that had contracts from Cuba, from Guantanamo, into the base, like cooks. All cooks that used to work in restaurants in Guantanamo Bay, in a base before it became a political issue, were allowed every day to pass. But it's only few, and they're well known, and it's just a special situation. But anyway, they decided that, okay, we're all going to U.S., but it's going to happen very slowly. It is only going to be, we're going to start doing interviews, immigration interviews, to prove that you are who you are, even though that was kind of impossible.
So how long had you been in Guantanamo Bay at this point?
I was there for 8.5 months. Yeah. I was there for 8.5 months. I believe that the last person that left, it was a year. So most of us stayed there for a long time. So how we were able to get in is, it was if you had medical parole, right? If you have medical parole, then you will get an appointment with immigration office. You will go in. It will be just like a green card. They will have to sit down. If they were real family, no big deal. But if it were fake family, they had to know everything. They had to know who set the alarm for the next day, what side of the bed did you sleep, what color was the kitchen, where was the washer, when you got married, where do you go in your anniversary, whatever. We will study for hours at nighttime if you had decided that let's pretend that we are family and let's try to get out of here. I have a parole. Let's try to get all together and go. And after that, then you have to wait until you were put in a flight. There was only 100 people flying on a weekly basis, and we were 32,000. So what people started doing, especially men, I was, it was interesting for me to notice, and I'm sure many of us noticed, how women were a lot stronger than men. I saw many men crying, wanting to leave. I saw them doing terrible things to get a parole. I saw people putting gasoline in their legs to get a medical parole and losing their limb. I saw people running into a dumpster to get a head injury to be medevac.
Oh my God.
To Jackson Memorial Hospital and die. I remember people getting burns from, they will take the MREs that we were giving were in a plastic wrapper. They will burn that and pour it over their arms to have a burn. There were guys that somehow will get syringes and needles and saline and will inject their testicles to get varicocele and get medical parole. I saw guys sticking pieces of wood up their butts to get hemorrhoids so they would get a parole to get in. So that's the conditions we were in. I think psychologically it was worse than anything else, because the rest we were pretty much prepared because we never had much, so that wasn't a big deal. Privacy, we really, I don't think in Cuba we really have privacy like like there is privacy here. I don't think ever. Our lives are much more open.
Right.
So that wasn't a big deal. I remember changing clothes underneath a sheet around 40 people. I mean, it wasn't a big deal to me.
Meanwhile, though, you were also falling in love, were you not?
So yeah, that was entertaining. So every time you work for anybody, they will try to keep us entertained. Actually, we did a lot. Now that I think about it, I actually remember taking CPR courses there for free and becoming an instructor, a CPR instructor, to teach the rest of the physicians CPR at the base, because we were doing nothing. I remember using all the labs at the Guantanamo Bay Naval Hospital. I mean, they were great to us. We had every possible thing to get entertained. So one of the activities was, for example, immigration will take a bunch of migrants or refugees out for a day at the beach. And I just happened to go to one of them. And so we met 4 or 5 immigration officers there. And one of them is my husband now. That was, I'm sure this going to be a much longer story. And I don't know. But anyway, we got into a lot of trouble because of things that were going on within the immigration office, jealousy and things like that. And I end up being accused of, or actually Daniel ended up being accused of soliciting sexual favors from me, promising me that I will get out of the country sooner, right?
So you're the people that were in there out of jealousy, and so you were actually developing a loving relationship with a guard, basically, and you were considered a political prisoner of sorts. So
well, he's worse because he was an INS officer.
Yeah.
So this will be the people that, if they wanted to say you're leaving in a flight this Friday, you could. I don't think that they were really corrupted or anything, but we were accused that he was trying to get sexual favors from me, promising that I will leave. I will come into Miami sooner, which wasn't true. But anyway, that became. I remember getting picked up between the immigration office and. There was a clinic that I used to volunteer to draw blood for immigration exams, and be picked up by a couple of INS officers saying, "Hey, we just want to talk to you for a minute," and put in a car. And next thing I know, I'm right in the middle of the chief of intelligence of base, and he has all my documents. Needless to say, I had a fake family. I had a husband and a brother, which was not true. It was my second cousin that I happened to meet there.
So these are, you had said that this is your husband, this is your...
Yep.
Yeah, okay. So now you're in sort of a trap because you've fallen in love with Daniel, but you also have pretended to have this family, including a husband.
Yeah, exactly. I have this issue now because even though, and one of the things that Danny realized, at that point we weren't really in any kind of relationship. It just happened that we met at the beach. And you know what, Susan, it's just weird how things happen in the world. But when I got to the camp that night, I had the slip. The next day was my immigration interview with my fake brother and my fake husband. the day before. So that created a lot of talk because the guys that did this actually were at the beach with us, right? And now all of a sudden, I walked in. The first person that I see is Daniel. He's like, "What are you doing here?" I mean, he was completely taken back. And I'm like, "Well, when you guys drop us off at the camp, I had my slip that today is my interview." So in Daniel's head, I have a brother and a husband, right? That's what happened. So your interviews are individual. So he interviewed the three of us. And he did mention to one of my friends that worked at the mailroom that he knew that we were lying. But that didn't mean anything. Everybody was going to go. But he knew that
Daniel knew.
that wasn't true because when he interviewed us, we gave different answers.
Daniel knew this, you mean?
Yeah, he did. He realized that interviewing us, right, that we were lying. And so I felt bad. And I saw him later on, and I said, "Listen, I wanted to apologize." And he pretty much said, "Don't say anything." Like, pretty much, he didn't want to know anything. As far as he was concerned, we were going. And whenever our time was going to come, but we were going, even though he knew that we weren't related, right? So that's when the relationship starts, right? And it was already, for the people in immigration, a shock that I was there the day after, even though it's just a random, well, I don't think it was random at all.
Right.
Right?
Right.
I mean, it was just meant to happen.
But from people that weren't, they just assumed that Daniel met you and then said, "Oh, I'm going to get this interview really quick." They didn't know that you had already been. Yeah.
Exactly. So next thing I know, I'm standing there in the middle of this, and the guy's like, "We're going to protect you." I'm like, "Protecting me from what?" "Oh, no, we know that there is a person that have promised you things, and we're going to get to the root of this, and we're going to protect you." And I'm like, I'm losing it. I'm in the middle of this room. There's two immigration officers there. There is the chief of intelligence of the base, and then I have two Navy guys two Marines standing right there. And I see myself, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm like in limbo here. Nobody knows I'm here. My friends, my fake husband, my family, they have no idea what I am. I left in the morning, and now I'm here. And this guy is telling me, "We're going to protect you." And these two guys are walking to me to grab me by one arm, each one of them, and I'm kicking and screaming because I don't know what's going on, right? At that point, I really was not told much. So I was put in a van and pretty much drop off at the Navy station brig, where I was in a cell.
The brig? You got taken to the Navy brig. Wow.
I'm in a cell.
And in your experience from your country, that probably meant you were either going to be sent back or killed or something. Who knew? I
had no idea what's going to happen. It was just like being in a limbo that I don't know what was going to happen. And at the same time, nobody knew where I was.
And nobody was telling you anything?
No. They were going to protect me. That's all I knew. And I'm like, protecting me of what? I want to be protected from you. I don't want to be here. I mean, I'm against my will. I'm in a cell right now. I remember lying down in that bed with that toilet right next to it. Everything is metal. And I'm like, oh, shit, this is how jail looks like. And the door locked, and waking up in the morning and hearing all the, the guards just talking, oh, there's a girl in there, it's one of the refugees, and we don't really know what's happening. And I'm just listening. And I know they're sitting right outside my cell, and I'm like, oh my God, I have to pee so bad. I don't even want them to hear me peeing. And I remember putting toilet paper so it wouldn't make sounds. It was just pretty bad. And I was there for want to say for 2 3 days, when then they decided to bring in FBI. I mean, they made a big deal out of it. The FBI flew in, and Daniel was giving a lie detector test. I was interviewed by the FBI, and I'm like, I'm still stuck to my story. This is my husband. This is my brother, and after hours of interview, that they let me go to a bathroom, I see Daniel, and Daniel, the only thing Daniel says to me is like, just say the truth. Tell the truth. And I'm like, oh my God, my brother and my husband are going to kill me, right? Because that means their parole is going to get fucked, right? So I'm like, okay, I give up. I did lie. It's not my husband. It's not my brother. We are somehow related. It's my second cousin, this and that. But I really I didn't do with Daniel, what you guys are saying I did. Okay? So they sent Daniel to Fort Lauderdale for a lie detector test. They released me to the camp. I'm sitting in the middle of a mailroom just because I didn't know what I was doing. And one of the INS officer comes back and says, listen, go to your camp, pick up your stuff. You are leaving tomorrow morning. So that means that you have to sleep. They will put you to sleep in a different camp the day of your flight. So I go to my camp, and I pretty much say, I'm leaving tomorrow. They're going to fly me into Fort Lauderdale to give me a lie detector test. So, of course, my cousin and his friend, they're about to kill me. So I leave. They take me to a camp. And probably one of the worst nights in Guantanamo was because, my cousin was so mad at me that he pretty much was able to make it all the way to a camp and stand up, on a wall that divided the camps. And, the whole night he was like, I'm going to kill you, you whore. You slept with everybody on INS, and now you fucked us. And now we cannot leave, and we're stuck here. And it was pretty bad. I was really scared that he was going to lose his shit and really harm me. So the following day, I ended up in a plane and we flew into Homestead, and my aunt was actually waiting for me, and so was the FBI guy that had interviewed me in Guantanamo. And he said, it's too late. I'm going to pick you up tomorrow at 7 in the morning to go have the detector test. So the following day, he picked me up at my aunt's house and took me to Fort Lauderdale, and I stayed there all day long going through lie detector test. The questions were very explicit. They ask you anything. My advice is never take a lie detector test, because I'd really said everything that I did. But the people that do these things are very narcissistic, and like one of the things that he will say is that I had never failed to get the truth out of anybody. I know you're lying. And I'm pretty much, after like 8 hours of this torture, I'm like, okay, what is that you want me to tell you? That I befriend him and try to do for him to take me out of Guantanamo sooner? Is that it? He's like, yes. And I'm like, okay, I did that. I was sick of being in Guantanamo. I think that by befriending him and pretending to like him and doing sexual favors to him was a way to get me here. Okay, that's it. That's the end of it.
So basically, they're just waiting for you to tell them their truth, not yours.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, and I did. And it was really, it was very explicit, Susan. Like, if we did have contact, which it was very minimal, because it's not like I can go into a house and to an office or anything. I mean, he touched my leg. If he touched between my legs, if you got wet, it was just very, very embarrassing. So, and then they just dropped me off at my aunt's house, and I had never heard back from any of them.
And for Daniel, I'm sure that was just the
So for
beginning.
Daniel, he could have stayed, but he decided to quit.
Yeah.
So he left, and after that, we met in Guantanamo. I mean, in Miami, and he picked me up, and we pretty much been together ever since, which is going to be like 21, 22 years.
Yeah, and
So.
he still hasn't touched you. I know your children, so.
It's been interesting, to say the least.
That is just what a journey. It's incredible. Yeah. The fortitude that you have is just unbelievable. And did you have to recertify to be a nurse in the United States?
Yeah. So thank God I had a BSN, and I had my graduation was in '92. That was very recent. So I had a lot of credits. So all I had to do is take the boards for the NCLEX, the boards for the nursing, and I was lucky enough to pass. And I have been working since '98 as a nurse. So
yeah,
that was.
Thank you for your
very
service
grateful for that.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Thank you,
Nikky. It's a heck of a story. It's just, I mean, so now you go back to visit, and is that just so surreal?
It was. I actually, the first time I went back to visit, we were still living in Washington, and we flew from Vancouver to Havana, and I did not tell my family either that I was going. So, so we showed up.
And how long had it been since you had seen your family?
19 years.
It's astounding. I don't think people really realize that there's just truly a huge separation that happens.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and you're talking about, it's not that I didn't see my friends. I mean, I'm talking about my mother, my father, my sister.
Yeah.
I mean, really close family. Yep. So that was 19 years. I was, it was sad to see that I really didn't see much change. People are still very poor, even worse, because now, we have this additional currency, and it's not. They try to compare it with the dollar, but it's just scam, and then nobody gets paid with that. So my mom still have nothing. I mean, she's not a communist anymore, but she has nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, my dad, the same thing as communist as he was. He was living in a place that, I mean, there wasn't even. His little place, it doesn't even have windows. I mean, it's just open, not even chairs. We had to sit down outside. And then I came back this year in April, and I do see a big change. I see a lot of private sectors growing. I can't wait to just explode. Great food, great service, same people, same nice people. People are poor, very poor, but at least I can see how the private sector, I think, is going to make a difference, because it's going to get the government to have to do better.
Mm-hmm.
So, even though, I mean, the taxes are ridiculous for these people, especially for us that we never even know what the taxes was. I mean, everything is owned by the government. I mean, it's just, you have no idea what that means. The hospitals, I mean, you can't even go to a hospital. I don't care, I mean, how much you know about medicine. If you don't have the tools, can't take care of anybody. If you have to be in a hospital and you have to bring your own water to take a shower and your sheets for a bed and your fan, and you're in a hospital that doesn't even have centralized air conditioners, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
When did you get your United States citizenship?
So I waited a long time, actually. I guess my plans, I mean, I was in a rush. I knew I could get it after being married to Daniel for 5 years, but I ended up doing it. I don't remember. I think it was like over 10 years that all of a sudden I started having changes with the kind of, Social Security changes. And then it's like, you better just do this now. They're increasing the price and the fees for all these things. Let's just have this done and let's just move on. But that was something that I had no rush on doing, and I don't know why. I was too busy having kids and learning again how to be a nurse, because it was like from day and night walking into a hospital here versus walking into a hospital there. So I had a lot of growing up to do, not just in language, but in profession and society-wise. It's completely different. So I have been in shock for like 20-something years now. Every morning I'm shocked about something different. But I guess, yeah. You only live the life that you're given. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Nikky, I really appreciate your time. It's and your story is one of thousands.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing. And man, anyway, I really appreciate that you are a human. Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time.
Yes. It's good to see your face.
Nice seeing you.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a good one.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.